Thank you for tuning in once again to his Vine and Fig Tree podcast. My name is Kurt Olson. I'm your host. I'm coming to you in the early afternoon of April 23rd, 2025. And this is an episode that is just straight faith issues. And you'll understand that as I get talking. But there are not any things going on in Washington, D.C. that are a part of this podcast. It will have to wait. Um, so over Easter, my family and I traveled to see our daughter at Cedarville University, and we spent some time together late day Friday, Saturday, and into the day on Easter before we traveled back. And it's about a 5.5 hour trip. So, on Sunday, and when we go out there, we try to make this happen, staying with one of my cousins on my dad's side of the family. Jeanette Miller is married to Brian Miller, and Brian Miller is the pastor of Berea Bible Church in Springfield, Ohio. And I've been in the church my entire life, and I can only guess there were times when my mom took my brother and I to some sunrise services that I simply don't remember, because there are three that I do remember. One is when I was at Liberty University as a student. One of the Easters, they had just had a freshly built football stadium. For the longest time, Liberty University, and before that, Liberty Baptist College, played their home games inside the city of Lynchburg, not on campus. Finally had a football stadium, and um, the year that was completed, um, there was a sunrise service real early. Um, and I remember that. A few years later, my brother and I my mom happens to be out of town with one of our aunts, and they're visiting one of one of the brothers. There was one of the brothers on my dad's side of the family. Um, my dad was the youngest of seven, so there were three boys, three girls, and then my dad. And they were down in Florida, and my brother and I went over to a sunrise service. Ironically, this cousin who I was just with, um, this sunrise service was at the church where her parents attended when they were alive, and that was Conowongo Valley, New York. And that happened to be a year when Western New York, you don't know what the temperature can be for a sunrise service, and you're kind of like, okay, what kind of a coat do I have to put on? It happened to be fairly nice that year, and the temperature got up into the 70s, but we did that year. And then Sunday at Berea Bible Church. And if you saw this location, you would understand how this church is able to pull off this in this location. Um, they have a resurrection garden, and they have basically, which looks like the tomb where Christ was, or some replica as best as they could get it. And that sun in the east comes right over those trees, and just a gorgeous setting. Nice message by the assistant pastor. We stayed for a breakfast, and then the main Easter service, and the message by Brian. So that was Easter this year. I mean, we come home and I'm trying to catch up on some things that were going on in the news and otherwise. And first thing Monday morning, we find out the Pope dies. So in my lifetime, the Pope that has the fondest memory for me and length of memory is Pope John Paul II. And that was based on his relationship with Ronald Reagan, former president of the United States, his relationship with former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, other Western leaders at the time of the Cold War. Then Benedict succeeded John Paul II in the 2000s, and he was around for, I think, what was it, 8 years or so. He retired, and then Pope Francis happens. Pope Francis is a guy who was regarded as the people's pope. Um, and just the disclaimer here, I'm not Catholic. Um, I've been in the Baptist church my entire life in various ways. When we were down south, Southern Baptist churches, a couple of them. And that's my faith background. And so I'm not Catholic, and I'm not going to speak in some way that is supposed to somehow make me some kind of an expert on Catholicism when I'm not. But a couple observations I do want to make about this Pope. One, uh, as I have become more and more familiar with the persecuted church, in places around the world where believers are, their lives are at risk, just being where they are. And one thing I've come to learn is, let's say it's a Muslim country, okay? Muslims don't care if you're Catholic or Protestant. All they care is that you call yourself a Christian. And because some of the people who are being persecuted in Nigeria, where there is a genocide going on, some of those people are Catholics. Some of those people are Protestant and evangelical Christians. And Boko Haram, the Fulani herdsmen, um, the ISIS affiliate there in Nigeria, they don't care if you're Catholic or Protestant. Um, for all they care about is you worship Christ, and we don't like that. So that's one observation. Um, the other thing that I'll say about this Pope Francis, um, he put an awful lot of trust in Xi Jinping. Back in, what was it, 2017, 18, something like that, there's this kind of agreement that comes forward that the two will work together on the naming of bishops and potentially cardinals that pop up in China. And basically, what happened was Xi Jinping um, didn't keep his word and became someone who, imagine this, a communist who can't be trusted. I know that's kind of shocking, but um, Xi Jinping did that with Pope Francis because he ended up naming someone who was very favorable to the communist regime, and Francis just up and kind of rubber stamped the appointment of a bishop, even though it may seem like he didn't want to. And there's this thing called the Sinicization of the Catholic Church going on in China. And Xi Jinping is doing everything he can to neuter the effectiveness of the church there. And again, a communist leader doesn't care if you're a Protestant or a Catholic. If you are either one, you're regarded as a potential national security threat because you won't get in line and worship the state. You won't worship Xi Jinping. You won't worship um, all that the communist Chinese Communist Party stands for. And so that's going to be a second observation I make about this Pope. Um, but Pope Francis, he's the people's Pope. He's the Pope who said, um, it's not for me to judge. And that's going to lead me to my third observation here. Um, this Pope was someone who, all indications are that he wanted to create more room for the LGBTQ community in the church. And he was, some believe he was going to be making room for um, female ministers. However, that was going to look. Was he going to call them nuns? I don't know. But there was a lot of talk in recent years on those kinds of things. And I don't regard myself a expert on Catholicism. While there are significant differences between Catholic theology and theology that I've raised to accept and believe, um, salvation by grace through faith alone, there would be no praying to Mary, and Protestants and people in my tradition don't pray to saints. We don't go through a pastor to confession, any of that. So, yes, there are some significant theological differences between Catholics and Protestants, but the world over, they pretty much don't recognize those things when supposedly they could be a big deal. So, anyways, I want to get all that out on the table simply because Pope Francis is lying right now at the Vatican. There's going to be a service for him, I believe, on Saturday, and we are soon going to have a papal conclave. Now, if you go back, and I just saw the list this morning, if you go back to 1922, and I think it's like 7 or 8 popes that have been appointed over that period of time, um, the average time span to get a decision on and the black smoke to emerge, oh, we have a new pope, um, 2 to 3 days. So whenever they start the papal conclave, um, expect it to be somewhere between 2 to 3 days before a pope is named. And this pope became Francis became pope in 2013. Those were the early stages of the second term of Barack Obama. Um, and there have been a lot of changes that have unfolded since then. While yes, we've still had a variety of wars going on, even for us as a country, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Even since then, there's been massive changes in the West and the free world that a lot of people would call it. And I am most interested as a and one of the reasons why I'm interested in what happens with the Catholic Church is simply because as as one of the faith traditions in the world, um, just having an awareness of what's going on there. So, um, and I'm not as interested in a name as much as I am where the person's from. Some people are thinking this would be someone with a far more Italian background. One of the people that I've heard mentioned is someone who could be from the Philippines. And if that happens, it would be the first Asian pope ever. So with Pope Francis being from, I believe it was Argentina, somewhere in South America, um, are we going to get a pope from somewhere other than Italy or somewhere in Europe? Is it going to be someone from Asia, Africa, somewhere like that? So, those are the things that I'll be looking for as this unfolds, whenever it unfolds. The last thing I want to bring to your attention, and I am going to put it in the comments of this podcast, there was a column that emerged on Good Friday in the New York Times. I became aware of it for the first time this morning, and I have read it. And this is basically someone who is now in her, 30s, born in the 1990s. So she's a millennial. She talks about her faith journey, starting out as, get this, a Mormon in Arkansas. Um, so this is my comments are not about her per se, as some observations that come from what she wrote, and a few things. She talks about how when she got older, she became aware of Richard Dawkins. And Richard Dawkins is a well known atheist from the UK. Dawkins and a few others were regarded as the group that were called the New Atheists back 90s, 2000s. And these people were declaring God dead, and this was going to be a new age of secularism the world over. There's no need for God, and the people who think they need God are delusional. And we have a phenomenon here in the United States that has emerged probably in the last 15 to 20 years. It's called the nuns. No, not the women who are Catholics who whack you on the back of your hand with a ruler at the Catholic school. The nuns, spelled Nones, the nuns. These are people in this country who declare no religious affiliation. And as our country has become more separated from kind of a more traditional America, an America where where families attended church, and this was back in the days when there were blue laws on Sundays, and businesses weren't open, or most businesses weren't open. The nuns have become more of a thing over the past 20 years, as people have said, no, I'm either an atheist, an agnostic, or someone who just doesn't declare any religious affiliation. And that group of people has basically, based on the research by Ryan Burge, who is I would regard him as the one of the premier researchers on faith in this country. You've got George Barna, you've got Ryan Burge, you've got the Pew Research Center. Those are the names you will most typically hear about. There's a few other organizations like the International Institute for religious studies or something like that, or religion and democracy, something like that. Um, you'll see a few others, but those tend to be the top names you see. And the nuns have basically hit their plateau, and that's where they are. And it's about somewhere between 31, 32, 33, 34% of the population. That's the nuns. Now, what has all of this focus on secularism in our country got us? Nothing. It has spawned greater loneliness in our culture. It has spawned, especially among younger people, a group of people who are depressed. They will talk frequently of their own mental health challenges and various things. And social media has not brought satisfaction. Access to instant information has not brought satisfaction. The various things that are a part of our culture have not brought satisfaction. And this girl writing in the New York Times about faith issues, um, we shouldn't be surprised with reports out of England and other parts of Europe that there's an increase in church attendance. Church attendance in Europe has been in free fall for decades, like in the single digits. And they're now seeing segments of their population hitting in the 20% who are attending. So, uh, if that's a thing going on in Europe, we're going to start seeing why that might be manifesting itself. I mean, and Europe likes to brag about itself being, fairly socialistic in their government policies, and we're more left of center than the United States, even though we have regarded the U.S. as allies in foreign policy and things like that. But this year, we're going to have the 100th anniversary of the Scopes trial. The Scopes trial was the trial in Tennessee back 100 years ago that led to the teaching of evolution in schools. And I've been in the church my entire life, and I don't have not a single regret. Um, we have People will talk about the three B's attached to religion and faith: belief, belonging, and behavior. Belief, understanding who God is and understanding there is something bigger than ourselves. And there are answers to the really big and fundamental questions in life. They're brought to us by God because there are too many things that can account for who God is, I would argue, in life. And belonging. Every church I have ever been a part of, they've had the back of my family when times were hard. When I was a kid, my dad died. My mom was raising two boys on her own. She never remarried. Um, since I've been married, um, I've had some health things that have happened. I've had some employment things that have happened. And no matter where we have been, the church had our back. And in fact, God would want it no other way. They will know you are Christians by your love. And I could tell a variety of stories that are examples of the church having your back. And that's my experience. Is the church perfect? No, there is not a pastor anywhere that will proclaim how perfect their church is. And if they are, the person's, let's just say, probably being a little naive. And behavior. The things we read in scripture about how to live are ultimately about behavior and how to behave. And these are things that once someone becomes a follower of Christ, you you strive to attain to by growing your faith, by becoming a wholly devoted follower of Christ. And that happens through reading his word, spending time with believers, prayer, a whole bunch of things. And if there are people that are Hindus or Muslims or Buddhists, more than likely they will say something positive about the Sermon on the Mount. That sermon by Jesus Christ in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7, where it talks about the heart attitude of people and how the motivation of your heart is what God is trying to get at. And that's everything from the beatitudes to loving your neighbor and how you view a variety of things. And those are the kinds of things that will also get us eventually to the golden rule. The golden rule that the world knows is treat others the way you want to be treated. In faith, in the church, love God and love others. So I say all that to say this. And again, I would encourage people, if you have genuine curiosity, read this column by this or this op-ed by this millennial that ran on Good Friday in the New York Times. Oh, Olson, why are you reading the New York Times? Because I try to be fairly well rounded in understanding what other people are saying. Um, even though there are portions of the media that have completely discredited themselves, and I could have a conversation just about that, just based on what someone from The Office said in a conversation with someone from MSNBC or CNN, one of the two, just in recent days. But The church has always had the back of me and my family. And wouldn't want it any other way. And as we have in recent years seen an increasing interest, especially on college campuses, um, kids expressing their faith. We've had mass baptisms in a variety of locations. We've had little the Asbury awakening or whatever people are calling it from just a few years ago. Some things are happening, and you can't help but wonder if people who are sold the bill of goods that, oh, you can find satisfaction in life through your work and name the thing. Eventually, people are going to get not fulfilled. And there are countless studies that attest to the fact that people who are people of faith, people with a faith in God, that they are the most satisfied and fulfilled people in multiple areas of life. These people tend to have successful marriages. There are other aspects of wellness and physical well-being that benefit those people, and has this attention on we can do things without God. Has it run its course? Um, I would argue that there's a God hole in every human being, and you're going to fill it with something. You're going to fill it with something. Your work, money, success, status, prestige, fame, or you're going to be in pain of some kind and you're going to turn toward alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, something like that. And those are the kinds of things that just lead to additional chaos, drama, and pain in people's lives. So, and we've just come out of a period here, folks, the pandemic. I mean, for all of the fear mongering that was done, I don't dismiss the fact that COVID's a real thing. And the personal security of individuals was at was in question many times during the pandemic. And when those kinds of things happen, some would argue people head toward faith, and because they're wanting other answers to things that are going on in life. And I just spend this time just kind of focused on faith issues to just help people see, okay, yes, it's a time of year. We've just come out of Easter and the Lent season. Um, but the churches that are growing in this country, they are not woke, and they are not giving you soft and easy believism, I would argue. And those churches exist, and yes, they have some appeal. Um, but I will make the argument that eventually there are people that will realize easy believism and other things is not going to give them the kind of answers they're seeking for in life. So, um, I will have that column in the New York Times, or that op-ed in the New York Times, um, attached in the comments to this column. And then the other thing I want to share with you is something I came across this morning. If you're familiar with Mike Rowe, the guy who back in the day did the segment on dirty jobs. He's done a variety of things that are focused on work ethic and jobs. Um, One of his jobs in the past has been a spokesman for products on QVC, and there is just a fairly funny skit that unfolds as this guy and the guy interviewing him kind of just go full ad lib on something related to his time when he was doing stuff with QVC. So, um, a very different episode this week than normal, and that's not a bad thing. And I certainly hope people are doing well. And for those faithfully watching this podcast, I thank you. For people who are reading my column, thank you. I did a column on Easter, and I intentionally wanted to help raise some issues and questions about why the resurrection is such a big deal in the Christian faith, and that's what that is about. So until next time, God bless and goodbye.